In this video, we're going to build a Rhythmic multi-layer patch on the ASM Hydrasynth. Although the Hydrasynth doesn't have a sequencer, there are many ways to inject rhythmic elements into your sounds. Let's get started and initialize the patch by pressing Initialize twice. This gives us a simple sawtooth wave. I'm also going to use the chord mode to set up a chord. First, I'm going to go to the mixer and turn down oscillator 1. We're going to start with oscillator 3 instead, which is tuned down an octave. We'll bring it up to 0 and keep it on a saw wave. I'm actually going to turn it back down because I want to control its volume with an envelope. To set this up, press the buttons for the envelope and the target module, the mixer, at the same time, set oscillator 3 level as the target, and turn up the intensity. This envelope gets a short decay time of about 250 milliseconds. Turn sustain down to 0 and give it a bit of release. Now what I'm going to do is turn the modulation intensity back down to 0 because it's going to be controlled by an LFO. In addition to controlling the envelope intensity with this LFO, we're also going to use it to trigger the envelope. So go back to envelope 1 and select LFO1 as the trigger source. Now assign LFO1 to control the mod matrix slot that we just set up for the envelope. Now the LFO controls the intensity of slot 1. I'm going to turn this up all the way. I'll set LFO1 to step mode, which is essentially a modulation sequencer. With the OS 1.5 update, the maximum number of steps has been expanded to 64. Turn on BPM sync and set it to 16th notes. Then let's set it to 32 steps and hit step edit. Now you can just go through the steps and create your sequence. The display helps a lot with this. I'm going to speed this up a little bit, as it can be a bit boring. Alright, our sequence is finished. Let's hear what it sounds like. Now let's set up a filter. I'm going to set the filter routing to parallel. Then I'm going to set oscillators 2 and 3 to go through filter 2. Oscillator 1 will be going through filter 1. For filter 2, let's set morph to about 25 and bring the cutoff up to about 20. Add a bit of resonance and turn up the envelope amount and LFO amount a little bit. So now the same envelope and same LFO that we just set up to control the oscillator level are also controlling the filter. Now I'm going to bring up oscillator 2. And let's solo it for now. Set this oscillator to wave scan mode and pick your waves. When you find something you like, it's easy to fill the other slots with related waves. Hold Shift and set the first one, and it'll load subsequent waves into the other slots. I want to modulate this using LFO2, so let's assign LFO2 to oscillator 2 wave scan and turn up the intensity all the way. I'm going to use LFO2 plus to make it unipolar. Again, I'll be using LFO2 in step mode. Turn on BPM sync and set it to 16th notes. This time, I'll be using 16 steps for my sequence. Bear with me while I speed through the editing process. And here we are. This sequence is now controlling oscillator 2 wave scan. Let's unsolo oscillator 2 and see what it sounds like. Next, I want to use another LFO to control filter 2, but this time create a gradual movement over a whole bar. I'll assign LFO3 to filter 2 cutoff and also filter 2 resonance. This LFO gets a rising sawtooth wave. Turn on BPM sync and set the rate to a whole note. Now the LFO slightly opens the filter over the course of 1 bar. I want to set up yet another LFO and use it to control the decay time of our envelope. That's going to do magic for the groove. Assign LFO 4 to envelope 1 decay and turn up the intensity just a little bit. I'll set LFO 4 to a triangle wave, turn on BPM sync and set the rate to a whole note. Now I'll adjust the phase of the LFO so it reaches its maximum roughly on beat 4. So this LFO is responsible for making the notes longer and shorter over the course of a bar. Let's add a bit of delay real quick. I'm using the LRC delay, which is interesting rhythmically. Turn on BPM sync, set it to 1/8 notes, add a bit of feedback and turn up the dry-wet mix. We can also add a bit of reverb. If you're using this sound in a track, you might want to skip this step so it doesn't get muddy. And while we're in the effects, let's add a phaser. I'm using phaser 3. We still haven't used oscillator 1 and filter 1, so we can add another layer. Let's bring up oscillator 1 in the mixer. And I'm going to solo it for now. Set oscillator 1 to wave scan mode. I've chosen the waves all wake 4, all wake 3, and all wake 8 in this order, and here they are. While we're here, let's add a bit of wave stack in the mutant 1 module. I want to do the same thing we did in the beginning of this video for oscillator 3, so I'll turn down the level again and set up an envelope to control it. Assign envelope 3 to oscillator 1 level. Envelope 3 gets a short attack time, a little bit of decay, 0 sustain, and a bit of release. I'll turn that mod matrix slot down again because I want to use an LFO to control it, just like we did for oscillator 3. And just like before, I'll set up envelope 3 to be triggered by LFO 5. Then I'll assign LFO 5 to control the depth of the envelope modulation of the level of oscillator 1. That's slot 7, so select depth 7 and turn up the intensity. Let's set LFO 5 to step mode, turn on BPM sync and set the rate to 1/8 notes. We'll be using an 8-step sequence this time, so bear with me while I set this up. Oscillator 1 is going through filter 1. I'll use a bandpass filter, turn the cutoff almost all the way down, and turn up the resonance slightly. Now let's assign LFO 5 to control filter 1 as well. Modulating envelope times can do great things for the groove. So I'll set up LFO 5 to control the attack time of envelope 3, but inverted. So when the LFO is high, the attack time gets shortened, which gives it a bit of an accent. And while we're setting up modulations, let's use LFO 4 to control the panning of oscillator 1. Let's unsolo oscillator 1 and see what it sounds like. In the final step, I want to set up a macro that lets me change the sound using polyphonic aftertouch, so I can accent individual notes as I'm playing. I'll go to Macro Assign and select Macro 1. Slot 1 is used to raise the cutoff frequency of filter 2. Slot 2 is set up to increase the decay time of envelope 1. And let's go to slot 3 and use it to increase the dry-wet mix of the delay. Now these things happen all at once when I turn up the Macro 1 knob. I'll map this to the polyphonic aftertouch in the mod matrix. So now I can highlight individual notes as I'm playing, which is a really nice effect. And that's it. Here's our finished sound, all without a sequencer. I should note that I do have a sustain pedal hooked up to the synth that helps me to hold notes as I'm playing.